What's going on, guys? What's going on? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. What a day. Today was actually one of those kind of nice little trend days that we actually had. I gotta say, pretty interesting. Google literally just wet the entire bed. The sad part about Google was that it actually looked like there was some pretty decent call flow that was coming on Google for the most part. But then we actually also had the market flow that came through the Discord, and if you saw, there was a pretty large put buyer. So some pretty disgusting price action off of Google. I think that Google's actually been one of the more reliable names historically that have actually more so popped, especially during circumstances that we've had since COVID arriving. But the fact that it looks like, and I haven't even looked at the numbers particularly, let's actually take a look and see what did they actually come in under. I'm just gonna take a quick peep. Let's see what's going on. See if I can run up the numbers. Let's see. Come on, any moment. It's got to be on Twitter here somewhere, right quick. I think we also had Texas Instruments that reported today. Spotify was one that I was pretty high on. I'm gonna actually see if we take a look at that one as well. See, I should be able to get these results any moment now. Alright, you know what? Better idea. Just type it into Google. There we go. We should be able to pop it up now. Alright, so apparently Google reports EPS came in at 1.06 versus the 1.25 that was expected. Revenue was 57.3 billion versus the 58.2 expected. So they did relatively have a miss on today's earnings. So that explains the pretty much the quick reaction that we got as it dropped down 5% pretty much immediately. In terms of support that I would be watching for, it will be relatively right around this level here, around 96, close enough to under 97 is what I'm watching for support. So we should see this particularly take another about $2 to the downside here, and I will be watching for support right around 98 and 3/4. That's what I'm going to be looking for support going into tomorrow, and we'll see if there's any reasonable support in terms of a more meaningful reversal, I want to say, or if do we end up falling below that support. And then the larger degree image that you see off of Google here is the megaphone that's in place. So if we end up losing that 96.75 spot, then we do have a shot of trading all the way down towards the support of this megaphone, which will take us down towards 92 to 92 half, depending how quickly we end up getting down there. But it looks like it was pretty much just a disgusting miss on their part. It's going to be interesting once the call starts how their guidance is going to play out. Do we see a recovery based upon how they guidance for the next quarter? Do they even provide a guidance for that matter? That'll be the biggest question. And so, do we, if they guide up, then maybe we could see the stock actually particularly hold at least that 96.75 mark. That sets us up for a more reasonable bounce. Otherwise, if they particularly guide down or don't provide guidance at all, then it's likely that we trade down below 96, and that'll take it down to that $92 mark. All right. So that's what I'll watch. We'll see how that pretty much projects, how that plays out within the coming minutes here. I wanted to take a look at Spotify, and this was rather disgusting as well. I actually saw a lot of call flow going out to Spotify towards pretty much the end of last week. They were hitting the 100 call strike for Spotify, but it looks like it's already ran up so much ahead of the earnings. You had about a near $10 move, more so from when this inverted head and shoulders action took place. So what you're actually doing right now is retesting that inverted head and shoulders. If I kind of just draw the line going across, you are particularly retesting that head and shoulders right now as the neckline. So it's potentially that you should have strong support on Spotify right here, right around this 88 half is what I'm looking at for some meaningful support on Spotify. And we'll see how that particularly recovers. If it can't end up holding that 88 level, then that's when it's going to particularly look to play into this gap fill below. That's going to take place below 84 and down towards 82 half. So about a $2.50 little gap fill that you're looking at if we can't hold $88. If we hold the $88, then look for the breakout to take place and take place right back over that $93 mark, and we could push right back up towards that $100 for a new potential high off of this nice little reversal that's taking place on the hourly. All right, so that's one. We'll see how that plays out. The other name that we had earnings on was TXN. Let's see how that one's doing as well. Texas Instruments. This one's another one that's sinking. Wow, a lot of earnings sinking right off the bat here. So, kind of discussing price action. This one looks like it's going to pretty much be a royal flush. Support I'm watching here on Texas Instruments is 151 half. So you have about another $2 to the downside here potentially for until you hit meaningful support. But 151 half, look to see if you kind of build a base for a reversal back to the upside. Otherwise, below 151 half, I believe you're looking at a new bear market low, and that's going to take you under 149 half. All right, so that's another one. I think those are pretty much the three marquee names that stood out to me for earnings today. Otherwise, let's jump into SPY. Pretty much looking, today was a beautiful trend day. Let's put that out there. I don't believe anyone expected us to trend as much as we did today, as high as we did, breaking north after rising wedge, was just more so the more mind-boggling part of today's entire price action. But you had solid consolidation, you had solid names that continue to hold well. Your Tesla, that was a beautiful gap fill that was on the way up towards that 221 mark. It held steady. It continued to grind. We had Netflix that actually took off earlier on in the day. I believe SIG also dropped a chart on that with a nice little zigzag wedge, broadening wedge action to take place and for it to base and break out further. So that's another one I'm going to keep an eye on. I would not be surprised if we actually see that push up towards that $300 mark and actually potentially break north of that. That'll be one that I continue to keep an eye on going into tomorrow. But those are pretty much the two earlier names. And then, of course, you had the semis. Semis is always something that you have to watch, especially when you're looking for reversals in the broader market. When the semis typically pretty much hold their own weight, they usually hold and show strength. It's usually not a good sign for the broader market unless there's a catalyst in play to take place for a reversal. So that was a positive sign seeing the semis. Nvidia was pretty much holding up for most of the day with AMD right behind it. So that was pretty much what you're looking at for most of the day. But bigger picture, looking at SPY here on the hourly as I kind of zoom in, the bigger picture is looking at the fact that we're approaching an overhead resistance right towards this 386 half mark is what I'm looking at to pretty much enter into my supply that I have for SPY on the hourly. So it makes sense that we ended up breaking that little trend line support from today's entire trend. And we're actually breaking that trend now after hours based upon the fact of Google's earnings. All right. So I'm gonna look to see how much we retrace off of this. I'm looking at the base that we kind of built here intraday. I believe that was also the point when me and Avery were on live. We were looking at a little ascending triangle action intraday. But I'm gonna see if we end up retracing down towards this 378 half. Look to see if we end up testing that 378 as a support rather than the resistance that we attempted to break out multiple times intraday. So 378 half is going to be a very key mark if we end up continuing to retrace below that 380 on SPY. So I'm going to look for that 378 half. We could test that. I'll look for that to potentially act as a dip buy. Otherwise, if we end up not even retracing below 381 here, then I do believe that this is going to basically be more consolidation as we just get a little bit of regression off of Google. We'll see some other names likely pick up the slack by morning in the tech sector, and then we'll continue to grind. In which case, I have this pushing up towards 387 before we get the next breather, the next potential pullback in the broader market. All right. So I don't expect tomorrow to be as strong of a trend day as we had today. Obviously, Google's going to be the one to particularly weigh us down, but there should be other names that kind of give us and weight just even out the playing field for the broader market. In which case, we're not going to see a strong bleed out type of day, not just yet. Because remember, we still have more catalysts on the horizon. We still have Microsoft that's going to be on deck, and we have Apple that's going to be on deck. Those are probably the two biggest names that's left on the board to pretty much report earnings. So that'll be something that'll play a factor, and I don't expect so much of a big swing to the downside until those two names at least report their earnings. All right. So be careful trying to force the downside would be the bigger sentiment of what I'm trying to express off of that. All right. Let's see what names. Veer, you mentioned Netflix. Let's take a peep at Netflix. Let's see what's going on with her. So I'm going to spread it out towards the weekly here first. Let's see if I can take it out to the weekly. The bigger thing on the weekly here that actually took place was that we actually broke north over that 290 spot. That was basically where your 200-day EMA was pretty much lying. We had the nice little support test off of the weekly here so far. That was where we had a nice little pullback yesterday. Then ended up retesting that 282 half spot. But now as we dial down in towards the daily here, you can basically see the little base that you tried to build. Off of that, you attempted the breakout of this ascending channel. You had the pullback. You had the full-on breakout that took place on Friday. Yesterday, you had the pullback. and here was your continuation. So just a little bit of regression towards the end of the day. That's all that was to me. Just something a healthy regression. As long as this continues to hold 282 here, I believe you're going to see the continuation on this gap fill. And the next marquee level that I'm watching here for the upside is going to be close enough to breaking north of 298. And above 298, I am watching 303 for my next level of resistance. All right. So 282 holds, you're going to see continuation, and you should be targeting 303 here on this next leg to the upside if that indeed happens tomorrow or it happens later on in the week. All right. But 282 is that big critical level that you want to see this hold. Otherwise, if you can't hold 282, that would likely be where I say you look to potentially watch if the overall uptrend is going to end up breaking. All right. Let's see what else. Microsoft is out as well. Oof. All right, I did not know they were already out. Okay, so that actually does change the entire landscape of the market. So you have Microsoft bleeding out, and you have Google. If I glance back at Google, yeah, so Google is weighing down heavily still. Not no kind of relief as of yet. But Microsoft being down now as well, that entirely changes the landscape here for the entire broader market. Critical support that you're watching off of Microsoft here is sitting at 241 half. That's the level to watch, is 241 half. Below 241 half, I will be targeting down towards 236 in continuation to the downside tomorrow. All right. So if 241 can hold by morning, 241 half, look to see if you get consolidation, if you get a base to build. And what could actually play out here, just to give you a little bit of a hindsight, if I kind of just draw it out, well, I don't necessarily think I have to draw it out, but if I use the cursor, you see a left shoulder, you see the head that's potentially taking place, and you could see a right shoulder off of this little drop off from their earnings. So that'll be something that's going to be interesting to watch, in which case that should take us down to what I have as a quote unquote demand zone here off of the daily. And that's between 234 to 236. That's also pretty much equal to the left side shoulder. And we'll see if that acts as your demand, your true demand, and if we can curl back up to potentially actually make sense of this little inverted head and shoulders breaking out to the upside. So that'll be something that's going to be interesting to watch. I would assume though that we end up breaking south of 241 and we trade down to 236 in the range of 236 to 234, and we'll look to see if we build a base and curl back up. That would be my anticipation here if this inverted head and shoulders is indeed looking to play out as it's pretty much constructed so far. All right. But that is definitely changes the landscape. And why do I say this? Because now you have two big names in the tech sector that's weighing you down instead of just one. So Microsoft pretty much being a heavyweight, Google being a heavyweight. What is going to be the not necessarily the catalyst, but what is going to even out the playing field tomorrow for us to particularly have a range bound day, a flat day, or even a green day for that matter, more so than having us way down into the red tomorrow. So I don't necessarily expect a bleed out for the broader market, particularly. Obviously, it could change by tomorrow, but just given the fact that we still have Apple on deck, I believe we still also have Amazon that's going to be coming up as well. Let's see how that ends up changing the landscape in the coming days here as well. So I'm going to look to see key levels again. That's what you're looking out for going into tomorrow. That's why I'm saying the key levels. If the key levels look to break on these individual names here from Microsoft and Google, then that's when you're going to look to see how the broader market is going in response to that. Or if indeed do we see the names like Tesla, like Apple, like Boeing, and the semis, do they pick up the weight, in which case the market is going to hold up? If those names don't hold up tomorrow, then it's likely the fact that Microsoft and Google are going to lead the way to the downside, and the other names are then for going to pretty much follow suit into the downside. All right. The other thing to pretty much factor in was that we were particularly watching the VIX here today. So I kind of want to highlight the VIX, kind of just showed you guys really quickly. But as we were watching the VIX today, that was something that was very meaningful in terms of the price action. You had a beautiful little falling wedge action that took place. That was something that we were watching today. Below the $30 mark on the VIX was a very big psychological level for the VIX to break down. I believe that is also what kind of gave us the bigger trigger for this to be such a big trend day that we had so far. But we are going to be getting into some critical support here coming in on the VIX, and that's therefore why we ended up having the bounce. I was expecting the support to come in right around 28.16, 28.15 is what I was looking for, but it does look like we're going to have some support here, and that's why therefore we see the market pretty much giving a reversal here after hours, in which case the VIX is going to reflect that. All right. So I will look for that. Look to see how the VIX responds. If we do indeed get back up towards that 29, 29 and a quarter mark on the VIX, look to see how we end up responding with the broader market. Is the VIX going to end up looking to be resistance at that 29 and a quarter, with the broader market looking to get a reversal back to the upside with the after hours dumps that we have? Or do we end up seeing the VIX break back north over 29 and a quarter, in which case now that mental $30 market's going to come back into play. All right. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. Prachi, you mentioned Myrna. Let's take a peep at Myrna. Let's see what's going on. So hourly doesn't look too bad on this. I believe it's a pretty nice little run that you've had so far. I would anticipate though that you're going to get a pullback off of this. Base that I was be the first level support that I'm watching here off of this would be to see if you do indeed retrace back down towards 134. I think that's a healthy pullback on this. We could particularly see that tomorrow morning with the broader market possibly into the red. So 134 would be potentially my dip buy opportunity that I'll be watching for right now off of Moderna. Otherwise, if you don't hold 134, I believe the next level support that you're watching is down towards 132 half is what I'm watching. Otherwise, you're looking for the breakout. The breakout that you're watching for would be over 138.32. Over 138.32, your next level of quote unquote resistance to supply is sitting at 142 on this one. So I like the upside on this one. I think that you should be able to get further upside on Moderna. I believe there was some pretty bullish call flow that's been coming in since last week, and I believe more so justified since the fact that you made a move from 118 already up towards 130, 138. So the call flow has been justified so far. Let's see if we can hold 134. You hold 134. I believe you have 142. That's pretty much incoming here on Moderna. All right. But I would say 134 here would be particularly my stop out. If you are in a position, kind of just try and keep your stop losses rather tight. So if you see you're approaching into that level tomorrow, be rather careful. All right. Let's see. Prachi, I was going to buy CMG calls and did not buy last moment. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what's going on with CMG. Holy crap, that went off. Chipotle just never dies. I'm not gonna lie. When I least expected, the only reason I think that Chipotle actually does not get pretty much the attention that it deserves in the option market is because of the fact of liquidity. That is really more so the bigger issue. If the liquidity was actually specifically there for Chipotle, I believe it would be a name that actually warrant more attention, and we would see more people talk about it. It's just the fact that the liquidity is so crap on Chipotle. That's why no one really talks about the name so much. But this ticker just never dies. You can clearly see off of the hourly here, you had a nice inverted head and shoulders action that took place. And now is when you're actually getting the breakout off of that inverted head and shoulders. You're running into some supply that's sitting here roughly right around 1680, 1681. So I would not be surprised if you likely smack that 1680 to 1681 by tomorrow morning, which is still roughly about another $30 upside from after hours price action right now. So that's something I'll watch tomorrow. I would hope if there's liquidity there tomorrow, I mean, it may end up getting my attention for particularly for a day trade. In which case, we break over 1681. I believe this actually has a lot more room to the upside. Your next level of resistance isn't sitting until 1725 on this, so that'll be something that maybe catches my attention tomorrow. But I would have to see the liquidity present because I am not trying to play that with such a low liquidity that they have on the options chain right there. All right. But yeah, unfortunately, the fact that you didn't pick it up and the fact that earnings are such a wild card, I would not condone you to pretty much do that anyway because it's. I kind of mentioned it, I believe, on Monday. Kicking off this entire earnings week right now, you're only going to have a handful of names, not even a handful. You could probably count it with just literally three fingers. There's only going to be maybe about 3 or 4 winners here coming out this week for these big names that are going to be producing their earnings this week. So be very cautious, be very, I want to say, judgmental about which names that you actually decide to go in, especially if you're looking to play the upside. All right. But other than that, I don't think there's anything else that catches my attention in terms of today's price action. It was a beautiful trend day. Looks like right now Microsoft and Google are setting us up to pretty much be our downfall. Let's see how much of a downfall. Do we have other names that kind of just pick up the momentum for them? Or just kind of just spare exactly the downfall that they're causing right now. Microsoft down $6 still. We'll see if that holds. Uh, let's see how does Google any continuation on that downfall. Still holding around that 98 mark. So I'm gonna look to see how the semis do foremost. I'll be beyond the semis, then I'll look to see my bigger leaders. Look to see how Apple and Tesla, if they can counteract that weight that was just pretty much put down on SPY because of Microsoft and Google. All right. But other than that, I will wrap up today's session. Not much else to pretty much discuss just yet. I mean, we had 3 to 4 earnings highlights so far, but I will leave it there. As always, I appreciate you guys appreciate you guys joining as always. You guys all have a great afternoon, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Right? Later, everyone.